Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 1988's Mega Man 2, the much-improved sequel to Capcom's 2D platformer that fully launched the Blue Bomber into stardom.
Following that is the crossover that was an unknown and confusing licensing nightmare for North America, yet was Nintendo Wii's best traditional 2D fighting game, 2010's Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars. It's Capcom Week somehow. Hey.
No real reason for it, just it's Capcom Week.
I feel like it's been a long time since we've talked about a traditional Mega Man soundtrack, and they are great. So of course there's one we had to talk about, if we talked about 3 last time. And then I'm like, hey, this is a soundtrack that I love, and a game that also has a Mega Man in it.
So why not?
So it works. I don't know.
Yeah.
Joe, how you doing? What are you playing?
I actually started Symphony of the Night earlier this week. I am at that point in every Metroidvania where it's at the very beginning where you're like, I'm finally getting into that momentum. I'm getting there. Oh no, I don't know where I can go next. I feel like I've explored everything, and obviously I haven't. Otherwise I'd be able to move on, but you know. And also, at time of release, it's over, unfortunately, but I've been playing a lot of Steam demos. I downloaded 40 of the Steam Summer Festival demos, and I've been working through them. I think I've played like 16 at this point, 15, somewhere around there. Some good stuff in there.
That's good to hear. Maybe some things that'll pop up on this show in the future. Yeah, your progress sounds like where I hit that wall in Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night. But that was also like, oh, the enemies are much harder than they should be at this point. And I don't know if like that's a path that I'm choosing to go down wrong, but I felt like it was the logical flow. Anyway, yeah, so I feel that when it comes to those kind of Metroidvanias for sure. I have The Last of Us Part 2 installed on my PS4, waiting to start it. I think the weekend will help with work, being pushed aside because it's going to be the weekend. And then, so I should be able to start that and get back to you next week. But until then, there was one headline that we missed. And, last week it was, I think it just slipped right in before we were recording or whatever, but wanted to bring it to your attention this week in our composer follow-up headlines. A couple weeks ago, we mentioned Persona 4 Golden, Persona 4, and how we were lamenting that it's one of the best games on PlayStation Vita, but, you gotta have it on PlayStation Vita. Nope, the game's out now on PC.
Yeah. I bought it right away.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna play it anytime soon, but I bought it immediately. Put more Persona games on Steam. And on Switch, please.
Absolutely. So, if you're looking to play that game, especially with the recommendation of our show from a few weeks ago, there's your opportunity. $20. That's a great price for it.
Yeah.
Love that. That's fantastic.
So, with that out of the way, let's jump into the Capcom of the week. Man, it really feels like there should be a Capcom game coming out this week, huh?
I mean, I don't think anyone wants to compete with Naughty Dog, so.
That's fair. That is absolutely fair. So, let's talk about what is probably among the most successful Capcom games of this era, Mega Man 2. So, Mega Man 2 was originally released for the Famicom/Nintendo Entertainment System on Christmas Eve, 1998 in Japan, December 24th. That's interesting. It was released there as Rockman 2 because his name is Rockman in Japan. Did you know, I learned while researching this game, that the original reason that they changed Rockman to Mega Man is just because the localizer thought the name Rockman was stupid and figured Mega Man would sound cooler.
Oh, that's such a shame because
that's the whole reason.
You got rock and roll. Eventually you get like treble and bass. Like, it's all music.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird, but that's apparently how that went down, so that's interesting.
Proto Man was named Blues.
Yeah, that's a much better name, I think. It would follow in June of 1989 and December of 1990 for North America and the PAL regions, respectively. And as one would expect, it was developed and published by Capcom. As the name might imply, given the big old 2 in the title, it is the second game in the Mega Man series. Hard to believe, I know. And is by many standards, for most fans, considered the most popular and well-regarded game in the classic Mega Man series, and is also up there as among the best games in the wider Mega Man net in general. We, like you mentioned, already discussed a classic Mega Man. That was all the way back in episode 9.
Oh, jeez.
So it's been about a year and change since last time we talked about a Mega Man game, like a classic one. Obviously, we talked about X. That was a couple months ago, right? I think. But it's been a little while since we touched the 8-bit boy. We talked about Mega Man 3 back then. And honestly, it's the same game. It's the same game. A classic Mega Man doesn't change super hard. Mega Man can jump. He can shoot. He could use various tools like make like a platform creator or a jet platform and all of this stuff. And in 3 onwards, all of these things would be changed into Rush, the dog. And this one, it's just like Weapon 1 and stuff like that. So the story takes place 1 year after the original game, as Dr. Wily has returned and created 8 new Robot Masters in order to destroy Mega Man and take over the world. Those Robot Masters are Metal Man, Air Man, Bubble Man, Quick Man, Crash Man, Flash Man, Heat Man, and Wood Man. And of course, like the original game, these stages can be challenged in any order the player chooses. Also, like the original game, once Mega Man has defeated one of these bosses, he's then able to gain their power and use an ability based on their power set, with every Robot Master being weak to another Robot Master's abilities. So for instance, if you go to Woodman and you kill Woodman, you get the Leaf Shield. And then you can go to Airman stage and he is extremely weak to the Leaf Shield. Or alternatively, you can go to Metal Man stage and then get every single Robot Master's weakness.
Metal Man is pretty OP, yeah.
The Metal Blade is the most powerful item in all of Mega Man, bar none. Mega Man 2 also added items called energy tanks, which were not available in the original title. They're basically little like cylinders with an E on them. You can pick them up and collect them and store multiple on the pause menu, and you can use them to heal anytime you need it. It also introduced a password system that was not present in the original game, that not only tracked how many Robot Masters had been defeated, but how many energy tanks the player had collected. Man, password saving sounds like it was a time. I never had experience with that until I was an adult. So, this is where I will ask, what are our experiences with Mega Man 2? What are yours?
It is the only classic Mega Man game that I have beaten. Now, granted, when Mega Man 11 did come out, I was able to play and beat that. But when we're talking about like the classic 8-bit style, or even Mega Man X, I played Mega Man 2 to completion for the first time last year. I had tried it earlier, like I think on Wii Virtual Console. I'm like, oh, even on easy mode, I'm bad at this. This is when I'm still arguably bad at games, but really bad at games back then. But with playing it in the Legacy Collection, with, save states, with rewind, things like that, yeah, was able to take care of it pretty easily. But I have loved the soundtrack for years. I think 2 is better than 3 in terms of soundtrack. I know that's where we differ. I think you think with 3 narrowly beats out 2 in that regard. But 2 is one of those legendary all-time 8-bit game soundtracks, and games yearn to sound like Mega Man soundtracks, honestly, with their catchy melodies, and they're just legendary that way. Like, you listen to old 8-bit music, and oftentimes you can pick out when it's from a Mega Man game. I think it's all really because of 2. 2 took it up to another level.
Oh, 100%. This is also the only Mega Man game that I have beaten, just in general. I've never beaten an X game, I've never beaten Legends, anything like that. It is the best Mega Man game, bar none. The best classic Mega Man game. There's no competition. This is the one. This is the peak of the classic series. This is it. And I also played in the Classic Collection with Rewind. That Rewind is a godsend, even though, honestly, in comparison to the other games in the series, Mega Man 2 isn't honestly that hard.
Oh, yeah, no, it's pretty easy. There are some things like Heatman's pits, but then if you use the weapon, the quote-unquote proto-rush, to like go across that gap, yeah, it helps. But, Rewind can help you reconsider things, let's just say.
As a kid, that was the first time I tried to beat Mega Man 2, and I think Heatman and Quickman were the only 2 stages I could not beat as a child. But going back to it as an adult, especially with that Rewind, we played it for Smasher-Pieces, so if you want my full thoughts on the game, that's actually a really good episode, I feel like. It was Mega Man's representative game, and that was a fun time. Matt had never even touched a Mega Man game in any way, shape, or form. So this was his introduction to the series. And it was a really, really fun episode. So definitely go check that out if you want to hear more about my personal experience with Mega Man 2.
I feel like it's a good intro point if people want to try classic Mega Man. Don't mess with the first one, honestly. Try 2.
First one's not very good. The first one kind of sucks. Yes, I agree. 2 is the best entry point especially for classic Mega Man. I'd say for Mega Man in general. I know a lot of people tout X as a really good entry point, and I think it's also up there as one, but I think 2 is the absolute best intro to the series. So let's get into the development story of how that was made. The original Mega Man had released in 1987, and it was apparently not considered a success. It didn't sell very well in Japan, apparently, around 200,000 copies, and it sold out all of its copies, so it was considered an okay sell in Japan, but when it came out in America, it bombed incredibly hard. Keiji Inafune, who was an artist on Mega Man and Mega Man 2, believed that this was a direct result of the legendarily bad American box art for the game.
Yay, bad box art, Mega Man!
Which, if you have never seen the original Mega Man box art in America, wow, it is considered one of the worst box arts of all time.
I wouldn't buy it either.
It looks so bad. It's this out of shape looking dude with a pistol instead of the arm cannon, and he's not blue, he's yellow.
Yellow and blue, yeah.
It's an awful looking box art, especially when you know what Mega Man looks like.
It's actually the best thing that Street Fighter Cross Tekken ever did, was put him in the game.
Yeah, unfortunate timing on that, but I mean, it's funny to look back on now that Mega Man's not dead. But back then, people were so mad. Nevertheless, despite this non-success that Mega Man had experienced, director Akira Kitamura wanted to make a sequel. He wanted to make Mega Man 2. He knew they could do better. They could improve upon the groundwork that they had built before, and they just had fun making the game. But producer Tokuro Fujiwara was completely against the idea. And who wouldn't be? It did not seem like it was a game that was worth making a sequel to Capcom. So Kitamura did what any loyal employee would do. Went right on behind Fujiwara's back, straight to the vice president of Capcom to say, can we please make a sequel to Mega Man? And to his surprise, the vice president at the time said yes, on the condition that essentially they were to make the game on their own time while concurrently working on other projects for the company as well. And honestly, that's just what they did. They worked on their own time to improve the groundwork that was provided by the original as much as they could. They improved the graphics as much as you can on an NES. They added new weapons. They built new levels. And in the end, Mega Man 2 was done in 4 months.
Whoa, that's amazing.
The whole game finished in 4 months. Crazy short amount of time. Even for an NES game. Unlike the original game, Mega Man 2 was actually a massive success upon release. As of 2015, Capcom said that it had sold over 1.5 million units. And it is, or at least was at the time, Capcom's 41st highest selling game in their history as a company. Obviously, stuff like Street Fighter 2 and Resident Evil probably topped it at some point. Mega Man X, I assume, probably topped it as well. Stuff like that. It is still the highest selling game in the Mega Man series. Games Radar ranked it number 2 on their list of best NES games of all time back in 2012, which it shows up on a lot of those lists. This is regularly considered one of the best games for the platform, just in general. Even, look, if you've listened to Smash Pieces, you know, I hate the NES. I think that era is built up of almost nothing but games that did not age super great. That is a personal opinion. Obviously, it's not a fact or anything, but, even I love Mega Man 2. I think that of all the NES games we played for Smash Pieces, Mega Man 2 is the only one that I had a great time from beginning to end. That game, this game's great. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Upon release in America, though, it once again got some really bad box art. Not as bad as the original game, mind you. But it is apparently a result of the author, Mark Erickson, not being familiar with the game and being told that Mega Man used a pistol instead of an arm cannon. So once again, the art features Mega Man closer looking to Mega Man, though he's wearing a bike helmet.
Yeah, that's weird.
In the art. But he's once again using a gun.
That sure is a pistol. Wow.
Yeah, it's not great. Kitamura and the composer, who we'll get to in just a second, actually left Capcom right after making Mega Man 2 to go work on the game Kokoron, which, if that sounds familiar, first of all, wow, you have the best memory ever. But second of all, you can hear all about how that specifically affected Mega Man 3's development in our Mega Man 3 episode, because that does come up. Mega Man 2's depiction of Wily Castle is specifically used as the base for the Wily Castle stage in Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. And the stage came back in Ultimate, not to mention 3 out of 4 of Mega Man's special moves and a lot of his smashes and aerials and stuff are specifically based on Mega Man 2. I'm pretty sure the only 3 abilities from 2 that are not present in Smash at all are Heat Man's ability, I forget what it's called, the Quick Boomerang, and the Bubble Lead.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think... Oh, the time freeze as well.
Flash, yeah.
Roughly half of his abilities from 2 are in Smash, in some form or another.
It's an important game. Makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Nowadays, the best place to play Mega Man 2 is, what we mentioned before, the Classic Collection. It's got the rewind function, depending on what platform you buy it on. Apparently, PS4 does not have the rewind function, but Switch does. And honestly, I think Mega Man just belongs on the Switch. I think it fits there the best. So
yeah,
that's where you should play the Classic Collection.
I played it on PS4, but that was honestly because the sale price meant I could get it cheaper there. But yeah, no, a Switch would be, I think, the ideal place to play it. It feels right. And if you have a problem with there being a rewind function, you don't have to use it.
Yeah, it's optional.
It's not forced on you at all. But it's great for those who do struggle with those older types of games.
Yeah. So, that composer that I mentioned earlier, who left the company right after this game finished development, is Takeshi Tateishi. So, let's talk about him. I did manage to find an interview with him, which is where most of this information came from, because all of the wiki pages I was able to find were useless. So, here we go. He was born November 23rd, 1964, in Japan, and his parents were both elementary school teachers. And much like in America, where elementary school teachers kind of just teach everything, it's not like middle school or high school where you are going to different classes and the teachers are more specialized and all that. In elementary school, every teacher teaches everything, including music in Japan. So if you want to be an elementary school teacher in Japan, apparently you have to know piano. So both of his parents knew piano, and that just directly led to Tateishi learning music. He says he was in a band by the time he entered middle school, which is where he became proficient with a keyboard. And despite all this, though, he did not go to school for music at all. He went to school and got a degree in economics. And then right out of college, ended up working for an advertising firm. But while he was working at this advertising firm, a graphics designer friend of his pointed him towards a job listing that said, like, Capcom was looking for musicians, and said, hey, man, you should apply for this. You would probably be fine. And he did. And he got the job. And that's where he became good friends with Manami Matsumae, who had joined around the same time as him, who we have talked about because she worked on Shovel Knight. She was also the composer for the original Mega Man. And he also became friends with Yoko Shimomura, who arrived after him, who we talked about all the way back in episode 1, because she is the best. He also developed a mentor relationship with his quote-unquote senpai, the Bionic Commando composer Harumi Fujita, who we have not talked about. His first project with the company was an arcade game called Mad Gear, which I'm not familiar with. And then, like I said, he left Capcom shortly after Mega Man 2 to work with Kitamura on Kokoron. But after that didn't pan out, really, he eventually joined Konami, where he ended up not doing as much composing. Apparently, according to him, because Konami had so many musicians that already worked for them, he kind of just ended up being like sound director or just an instrument person and stuff like that. And didn't really do much composing during his time with Konami. He did some music on like Tokimeki Memorial, and that's really about it.
That's really interesting because, yeah, I mean, it's Capcom Sound Team and then the Konami Kukeha Club, which, like, seemingly at the time, like the two big conglomerates of musician teams for video game development. So that's interesting that he'd go to Konami and then, like, not have a place.
And during the interview, actually, it was kind of a bummer because the interviewer asked, like, even though Mega Man 2 was like such a smash success and people loved the soundtrack, like you still weren't put on like composing jobs? And he answered with the fact that he apparently didn't even know that people really liked the Mega Man 2 soundtrack until years later. Oh. Nobody ever mentioned it to him.
Oh my gosh.
He had no idea because nobody talked about it. So until many, many years later, he just assumed that it came and went. It was kind of a bummer. His two big inspirations that he cites for a lot of his work are the bands Mezzo Forte and Yellow Magic Orchestra, which the interviewer happened to mention that almost every composer that he interviews mentions Yellow Magic Orchestra in some form or another.
Oh, yeah, it is not the first time we've heard that name on this show.
Yeah, it sure isn't. And to this day, he says he is still really good friends with Matsumai and Shimamura, and is also very close friends with Akira Yamaoka from his time at Konami. I believe he joined before Yamaoka did as well. So this dude's a senior. He's been in the industry for a real long time. Longer than some of the people we definitely consider veterans at this point. As for his discography, he's worked on a shockingly low amount of stuff. Obviously, he did Mega Man 2. He did the music for the arcade version of Willow. He did one song for the arcade game UN Squadron, which there's actually a story behind that we'll get into a little bit later. Obviously, he did the music for Kokoron. Did 10 tracks for the first Tokimeki Memorial game, which is a dating sim that was on the SNES, I believe. He was the project manager on Suikoden 3. He came back to do some music for Mega Man 10, and he also did one song on Mighty Number 9, but that appears to be the most recent work that he has done. So, some historical development research, specifically on Mega Man 2's soundtrack. Basically, all of it was composed by Tateishi, except one song, that we'll get into in a bit, was actually co-composed alongside Manami Matsumai, who, again, was the composer of the original game. And Tateishi was apparently chosen to work on the game instead of Matsumai because Matsumai had actually been moved to the arcade division because they were so impressed by her work on Mega Man and a few other games. And at that time, the arcade division was considered the more prestigious part of Capcom. They were the ones making the real money. How times have changed. So Tateishi got chosen to end up on the team. And he says that his first few attempts at making music were turned down by Kitamura, who said that the music he'd produced was too cute and asked him to make something, quote, cooler. And apparently the only song from the first run-through that made it onto the soundtrack in the final product was Crash Man's theme, which totally explains why Crash Man has such a different sounding theme than everyone else.
You're not kidding. It's the only one we didn't pick out of the 8 Robot Masters for our list. But yeah, it's catchy little dap. It's totally different.
Tateishi specifically says, these original tracks are gone and, quote, no one has them. Which makes me think, someone has them. When asked how long a track typically took to create, Tateishi says that in the most ideal situation during development, quote, I'd make a song in the morning, and Kitamura-san would approve it in the afternoon, and then the game data would exist that night. So, essentially a 12-hour turnaround. The music for the game was largely worked on when the game itself had already finished development, so Tateishi was able to cross-reference all of his work with the visuals that each song would go to, and he claims that he beat the game once a day every day that he was working on it, usually during his lunch break. He says he even went and played Mega Man 1 a few times in preparation. And I also wanted to mention one last little factoid. Sound programming for the game, like the sound effects and all that, it should be noted, Tateishi did all of the music programming and all that. Sound programming, though, was done by Yoshihiro Sakaguchi, who in the credits in-game is credited as Yuki-chan's papa. So that's kind of cute. So let's get into those 5 critical tracks. It's been a little while since we did an 8-bit soundtrack, I think. So let's jump into it. Starting with track number 1, Title. So in-game, this song actually opens with a track that comes before it, which is actually a clip from the ending music of Mega Man 1. which is super cool. This was something that was apparently requested by Kitamura so that players knew for sure that they were playing a direct sequel to the first game. Mm-hmm. And then it gets into what you hear in the clip, which is the actual title screen music. Some good old fast-paced 8-bit goodness. I really don't know what else there is to say. This song is basically just hyping you up and saying, it's time to get in there, baby. It's Mega Man. Let's do it.
I think a lot of people argue which is better for the title screen theme. Is it 2 or is it 3? They're both amazing. Mm-hmm. I waffle between the two maybe every day if I had to actually think about it every day. But this one's amazing. Yeah, it's straight up 8-bit energy.
Yeah, it's one of the best 8-bit title screens ever. But the most important part of a Mega Man game, I think, as I mentioned in 3, are the Robot Master stages, because they're the songs you're going to hear the most. And the first one we're going to point out is Airman Stage. This is the one that was co-composed by Takeshi, Tateishi, and Manami Matsumae. Matsumae apparently contributed 8 bars of this song because Tateishi was apparently in a rather large slump at the time that he was supposed to be making this song, and Matsumae's workspace happened to be right next to his. He would later return the favor by contributing a song to one of Matsumae's projects, UN Squadron, which I mentioned earlier. Both of these are actually uncredited, and for a long time it was merely rumors that this had happened because this work was done under the table. This was not officially sanctioned Capcom assignments. They weren't technically supposed to do this, though apparently the head of sound at Capcom totally knew it was happening and did not care.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this during when we talked about Matsumae and how and she was like, I thought no one knew about that, and it's like, I don't know, people did.
Yeah, it was just rumors for a long time, and then apparently got confirmed a couple years ago, honestly. This is one of the most famous stage songs in the game, I think. At the very least, it is the most famous of the Robot Master themes, for sure. Airman himself is mostly famous because of a fan song called I Can't Beat Airman.
Yes.
Which is about a player who can't beat Airman, and their struggles with this fact, including learning that Leaf Shield is Airman's weakness and trying to go beat Woodman, and then they can't beat Woodman. Which is weird to me, because Woodman is the easiest boss in the game.
That's a great song. Wow. Nankai yatemo, nankai yatemo, utama. Oh man, I could go on. Yeah, that's a great song. Look that one up. Yeah, I think getting right into it, the that's gonna stick with you, especially if you're missing some of those jumps to bottomless pits in the sky. And
oh yeah, it's one of the harder stages in the game. So you're gonna hear this song a lot, most likely. And so it's a good thing that it's incredibly catchy. It's really, really good. But I don't think it's as catchy, personally, as our next track. That's number 3, Metal Man Stage. Look, this is a close second for my favorite Robot Master theme. It just has this catchy, bouncy energy to it. Not so much like Crash Man level bouncy energy, but Just the da-da-dun-dun, 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 da-da-dun-dun. It's so good. I really, really dig this song. It even has a little bit of a sinister air to it, but at the same time, like, it just makes you feel kind of cool going through Metal Man's stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this one really stands out to me. I think this is my favorite Robot Master theme. Not only because it's great to remix for those who do, but for most players, they'll say, like, this is the first stage you should play in Mega Man 2.
Always.
Yeah. Not only do you get the Metal Blades early, but Metal Man is beatable with your Mega Buster. So it's an easy stage to go through in general. So yeah, if anything, it's like, because this is the first stage, it also happens to just be a very catchy theme.
Yeah. It's again, a very close second for my favorite Robot Master theme, and there's a reason for that. It's just a neat, good song. But my favorite is actually Critical Track number 4, Heatman Stage. It's so simple, and yet it feels really, like, sinister and honestly kind of overbearing almost, just with the and it's just that part makes the whole thing.
Yeah, it's relentless, and the ba-da-ba-da-da-ba-da-da-ba. Yeah, I think of so many of these melodies, and then, like, my brain just jumps to different remixes. It's a time when, like, the 8-bit melody has to stand out to be great, to be memorable. And, like, this soundtrack is that to a T, honestly.
And honestly, it always feels like the song's like, is that heat getting to you? It's not going away. Here it comes. You're burning up. It feels really cool. But look, none of these are the most famous song in the game. None of these are one of the most famous 8-bit songs ever written. But I'll tell you what is. It's Critical Track number 5, Wily Stage 1. This is the one. If you know literally any song from Mega Man 2, it's this one. This is one of the most famous 8-bit tunes to ever be written. According to Tateishi, this was actually one of the last tracks that he wrote for the game, and it was based on feedback from another track. Potentially Woodman's Stage, but he says he doesn't quite remember what song would have had the feedback that led to Wily Stage 1. Woodman is the closest he could think of, but he doesn't remember for sure. Wow. This song is awesome. It's above everything else that came out in that era, I think. This one song, like, it's a bar above everything. And I'd say it's honestly still a bar above a lot of 8-bit soundtracks today. It's the most iconic song in Mega Man 2 for a reason. It earned that spot just hardcore. It's so good.
It's an all-timer. You think of YouTube remixers like Brental Floss, you think of this song. Gotta run now. Gotta run. I like it. Yeah, you're right. This song was, I think, head and shoulders above anything at the time. Not only for just its pace, but just the earworm nature of it. And, like, it gets in your head as something where, yeah, you're pushing towards that end of the game. And you do have Dr. Wily stage 2. That's also a good track, but nothing says, you've conquered all the masters, you're taking on this castle, and bam, it throws you right into this. It's so good.
Yeah, it's impossible to talk about this game and leave this song off the Critical 5. This is like, all the other songs on the soundtrack I feel like can be mixed and matched together. This is the one that is always on the Critical 5. It always will be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, we got you, fam. We had this one covered, don't worry.
So, we got some tracks on the cutting room floor. You got 2. Hit me up.
We've got other Robot Masters, because they're honestly the best part of this soundtrack. And yes, we had to leave Crashman off. Like, that was the cutting room floor of the cutting room floor. That was difficult. But for my 2, my first one is Woodman Stage. Right away, it is all about those drums. And even, like, it's kind of emulating that wood jungle-like sound, right? But then it's the like this, such a fast pace that's going throughout the whole piece. Yeah, it's a really, really good one. A lot of people follow Metal Man, then go to Woodman because those metal blades will cut right through Woodman like crazy. So I feel like a lot of people recognize this one also for sure, but like, so this had to be here in some capacity. It's a really good one. The other one, I picked Bubble Man Stage. Probably one of the ones that people forget about most often, but I think like this track is like sneaky good. It's got this really chill vibe, like when you're like going underwater at the start of the piece, and then the drum kicks up and it's got these hard accents on beats 2 and 4 with and like I think you just have a lot of cool things going on in this one. Got a lot of fast-paced sort of backing instruments as like the piece goes on. I think it's necessarily present in this clip. Just a lot going on here that's really setting that vibe of you're underwater, especially for an 8-bit soundtrack. Really, really cool.
It's a shame that it plays on my least favorite stage in the game. And I don't even remember why. I just remember hating Bubble Man's stage a lot. Also the most useless weapon.
I mean, it wrecks Heat Man, but yeah, that's about it. Oh, and no, the final boss, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's the only weapon that can hurt the final boss. I forgot about that. That's stupid. So, I have 2 as well. My first one being Quick Man Stage. I don't know, something about this song just sort of gets me. I like this song a lot, except for I could really take or leave that buzzing sound.
Oof, yeah.
I think that part is kind of the main reason why it didn't end up on the Critical 5. It's a little bit much for my ears. Not huge fan of it, but otherwise still very good song.
Really cool C minor chord to start off with. Like, I like that.
Mm-hmm. And then, my other one is Flashman Stage. I think this is another very notable tune. I think the intro to this one goes on a little long, but I think that it's very, very fun, and infamously, there's apparently a song in Sonic 06 that just steals the apparently it just straight up yanks that out of Flashman's theme and throws it into a song in Sonic 06, so that's cool. But yeah, it's a really fun song. I like the song a lot.
I agree with all of your points. Yeah, the intro is a little long. They probably could have cut it in half and it'd be fine. But yeah, it's a really cool vibe. Nice blues on that stage. You're just falling through. Just avoid those big yellow bars that are coming to kill you. Drop through the pits. You want to drop through the pits this time. It's okay.
Yeah, it's So, what will I never forget about the game? I prefer 3's soundtrack ever so slightly, like you mentioned, near the top of the show, but this is the best Mega Man game. Bar none. In classic, at least. Like, this is the best one. It's so good. And I wish other games would have followed suit a little bit more with Mega Man. It's also another game that I can point to where when everybody's like, hard game mean better game hard mean good. This is alongside Chrono Trigger, where I point to it's like, this game's not very hard, and it's considered like one of the best games ever made. So, logic might be flawed slightly. I don't know. But yeah, I love Mega Man 2. I think this game is fantastic. I think it still honestly kind of holds up today, outside of a few issues, like the final boss being stupid.
It is.
But other than that, like it's a real good game.
Every Robot Master stage theme is at least good.
Mm-hmm.
What other Mega Man game can you say that about? It really defined like the Mega Man sound, I think. Matsumae also did a great job, but like this really cemented what a Mega Man kind of song, like kind of energy it needs. It's fantastic.
When people think of classic Mega Man, they think of 2, and there is a reason for that. So, for our transition, we like to highlight a fan cover, fan remix, wherever it may be from. And this one was a bit of a debate one, because we could have picked Hyadane. Hyadene's done some cool stuff with Mega Man. Jam Project. Brental Floss, you mentioned earlier, has done some neat stuff with Wily Stage 1 in general. But for me, when I talk about classic Mega Man, my heart tells me that I gotta go to the Megas. Because the Megas are great. And my favorite song from them, from their Mega Man 2 stuff, is based on Quick Man, which is called The Quick and the Blue. Specifically, this is the acoustic version from their album Get Acoustic. So please enjoy that, and we will see you in a minute.
Mega Man is coming to die. Now there's too much at stake. Now there he goes. He looked to the distance and cried, the man in blue has arrived.
And now for something rather different, but somewhat tangentially tied to Mega Man. Let's talk about Tatsunoko versus Capcom. And I say that title generally because it's a game with a bit of a complex history to it. See, Tatsunoko Production, you may be listening out there and you're like, what is Tatsunoko? What is that? I struggled to even pronounce that on the first time I tried to say it. Tatsunoko Production is a Japanese anime company. They're known for having a seahorse logo because, like, Tatsunoko, I guess, is a play on words there, where one of the interpretations is, like, sea dragon. And so it looks like the Pokemon Horsey in its logo. It's a nice light blue color. But Tatsunoko Production was started in 1962, way back then. And one of the series that they're most famous for producing, especially back then, was the Speed Racer anime in the 60s. Speed Racer, apparently known in Japan as Mach Go Go Go. News to me. Did not know that.
Also didn't know that.
But Tatsunoko production has been very active in that anime space since then, with franchises such as Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, Yatterman, and Kashan.
They're basically, essentially, the equivalent to Hanna-Barbera out of Japan, from what I understand.
Wow, that's a really good comparison. Yeah, I'd feel like, yeah, what Hanna-Barbera is to United States, yeah, Tatsunoko would be for Japan. That's really, really good with their sort of style of animation and like the early days of it. And then seemingly out of nowhere, a fighting game with some of these characters was announced in a crossover with Capcom. So Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Cross Generation of Heroes was released in December 2008 in arcades in Japan, and then also on Nintendo Wii in Japan on December 11th, 2008. Then you had about a year or so where Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars became the international release of the game, launching on Wii in North America on January 26th, 2010, with Japan and Europe on the 28th and 29th, respectively, so only a few days after that. Among the many changes in this version are the addition of 5 characters, as well as online play through Nintendo Wi-Fi connection. The game is developed by Eighting and published by Capcom. What is it? Much like the Versus games that we've talked about in the past with Marvel vs. Capcom 3, the Versus series is based on the foundation of it's a traditional 2D fighting game with tag team combat. In Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, this is 2v2 combat, where you pick 2 characters. They don't have to be one Tatsunoko, one Capcom. It can be 2 of any of the characters on the roster, and you take on another duo. But as a result, these kind of fighting games don't have too much of a story, especially from the late aughts, early 2010s. But the official description goes as follows, quote, "The city is safe tonight, but not for long. An ancient evil from another universe has come to consume time and space by causing many universes to merge together into a worldwide crisis. Heroes, villains, and the like from these worlds must fight to survive and find the evil that caused this crisis and destroy it." So basically in the game's arcade mode, each character in the roster has their own motivations, and they must battle through characters that are in their way. But the ultimate question is, what awaits at the end? Joe, here's what I'll ask you. What are our experiences with Tatsunoko vs. Capcom?
I played it. I still own a copy. It's somewhere in my house right now, out in the living room. I love it. It is a great game. It is the first traditional fighter I ever played. Ever. So it was my introduction to the genre. Because before that, it had been, Smash, and maybe like 4 minutes touching a Tekken game once as a very young child. And that's it. It's one of the first games that I bought with my own money, because I believe I had heard it talked about on Show Me Your News, specifically, which turned me onto that, and I ended up buying it. I really loved it, despite not knowing who any of the characters were. I ended up actually watching one of the things that one of the characters was from because of Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. So that's cool. I watched Karas.
Oh, nice.
Don't remember a damn thing about it, but I watched Karas. And in terms of characters that I played, I believe I mained Jun the Swan and Roll.
That's interesting. Yeah, gosh, I'm trying to remember who did I play? I think I played a few characters. I think Ipatsuman I spent some time with, Jun the Swan as well, Ryu, because it's Ryu, Morrigan, certainly, Yatterman, the Yattermans, also. So, some good times there. For me, you mentioned Show Me Your News, my old podcast, and my first memory of playing the game was the Japanese version, playing it with my roommates. The weird oddities there. Again, yeah, exploring these characters that I've never heard of before because it's totally outside my purview, but learning about them, and it's a great fighter. As I'll mention later, it's praised for simplifying like the fighting game controls, making them easier, and then kind of paving that to future versus games. Having the simplicity of, being easy to get into, but still having the depth of it being difficult to master, and like kind of striking that fine balance. But I feel like it's a game that it's kind of forgotten to history. You mentioned it, and there'll be Wii players who are like, "Oh yeah, I remember TVC, yeah."
Mm-hmm.
But if someone didn't own a Wii, there's zero reason to know what Tatsunoko vs. Capcom is.
And it's never been re-released anywhere. Ever.
And yeah, there are definitely reasons for that. But yeah, then the Ultimate All-Stars version came out. I tinker around with it a little bit, but I feel like I spent the most time with the game messing around in cross-generation of heroes. So there are certain aspects where I have a little more affinity for that version. So when it comes to the characters, when we're talking about like, I don't recognize these characters, I feel like many of the Capcom characters, many of you out there may recognize characters that are included. Some odd inclusions, to be sure. But as far as these Tatsunoko characters, as far as the characters that were included in the original Cross-Generation of Heroes game for Japan, you had Kashan from Neo-Human Cashern, Doronjo from Yatterman, Gold Lightan from Golden Warrior Gold Lightan, Hakushon Daimo from the Genie family, Ipatsuman from Yakuten Ipatsuman, Jun the Swan from Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, Karas from Karas, Ken the Eagle from Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, Polymer from Hurricane Polymar, Tekkaman from Tekkaman the Space Knight, and Yatterman number 1 from Yatterman. Capcom, a little more recognizable. Alex from the Street Fighter series, Batsu Ichimonji from Rival Schools, Chun-Li from Street Fighter, Kaijin Nosoki from Onimusha, Mega Man Volnut from Mega Man Legends. You have Morgan Ainsland from Darkstalkers, PTX-40A from Lost Planet, Roll from Mega Man, Ryu from Street Fighter, Saki Omakane from Quiz Nanairo Dreams. I don't think that's been a thing that ever made it stateside. And Beautiful Joe from Beautiful Joe. It should be noted that Gold Lightan and PTX-40A, one character from Tatsunoko and Capcom respectively, these are giant characters. So they have big health bars, and you cannot select another team member. That's the only character that you fight.
Which is honestly a mechanic I kind of wish they'd do again, because that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
They are monsters. They're tough to fight against for sure. When it came to the Ultimate All-Stars version, I mentioned that there were 5 new characters. And why would there be an odd number of characters if you have 2 companies that you have to contribute to? Well, the character of Hakushan Daimo was removed from the game, from the International Ultimate All-Stars version, due to licensing issues. And so this allowed for 3 new Tatsunoko characters and 2 new Capcom characters. By the way, he was also apparently removed from the Japanese version of Ultimate All-Stars, supposedly due to his unpopularity with players. And they wanted to keep it consistent with the North American version, especially when the game had online play. I feel like that makes more sense. But I found it funny, and then I was just like, oh yeah, he was really unpopular with players. Like, he was just not great. And so, okay, we'll take him out. In the meantime, Ultimate All-Stars had new additions such as Tekkaman Blade from Tekkaman Blade, Joe the Condor from Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, and Yatterman number 2 from Yatterman. Capcom had some good additions with Frank West from Dead Rising, and Zero from Mega Man X. Yes, this was the start of Zero wrecking shop in Versus games. So, as far as the development went, it started with Tatsunoko Production asking Capcom to develop a game with their characters in it. So, in-company discussions at Capcom started in about mid-2006. Producer Ryota Nitsuma was interested in working on a fighting game at the time. And when this came across, we figured the Versus series would probably fit this wide range of characters the best. However, this would be the first game in that series in about ultimately 7 years. It had been a long time since the Versus series had seen any life. In fact, development on this game, the team worked in parallel alongside the team that was working on Street Fighter IV, which was also a 2008 released game. And so in a way, like, these two games were like bringing fighting games back, because in the early 2000s, fighting games kind of withered away and the fighting game scene wasn't that popular, relying on old games because there weren't new games made. Famously, Street Fighter IV is the one that's like, oh yeah, bringing it back strong, but Tatsunoko vs. Capcom was doing its own thing on the Wii, whereas Street Fighter IV was on Xbox 360 and PS3. However, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom had huge licensing issues that had to be considered, because it's from all of these Japanese anime franchises. Tatsunoko, in fact, had reserved the right to decline any characters that Capcom requested to use without stating why. This is, in fact, why characters from Genesis Climber Mospiada or Samurai Pizza Cats, this is why they did not make the cut, because Tatsunoko just said no. Simple as that. In fact, the eponymous characters from Muta King, the Dashing Warrior, and Nurse Witch Kumugi would also be planned for inclusion, but they were eventually scrapped. On the Capcom side, it's a little more interesting, because Phoenix Wright and Franziska von Karma from the Ace Attorney series were considered, but scrapped. In fact, it was noted how they just didn't know how to make Phoenix Wright work as a fighting game character. I mean, we had only really ever seen him from the waist up, and maybe they could do something with his objection bubble, but we just can't make it work. They were able to get Franziska's whip working, but if they couldn't get Phoenix working, why would you put Franziska in the game? So those two characters didn't work. Also considered for inclusion were Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins and Ingrid from Capcom Fighting Evolution. They were also scrapped. Interesting when you consider that Phoenix Wright and Arthur were eventually playable characters in Ryota Nitsuma's next project, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So they figured it out eventually. It just wasn't in this Tatsunoko game. But why was it only made for the Wii? Well, it was first designed for Wii because it was simply due to a lack of Capcom fighting games on that console. But also they rationalized it that Wii's casual quality to it, just the Blue Ocean audience that they were targeting, they figured that that sort of casual nature to the system matched what the Versus series was kind of aiming for with its accessibility to fighting games going forward. See, the controls for Tatsunoko vs. Capcom were simplified to light, medium, and heavy attacks, instead of separating out the strengths, some kicks and some punches, and just trying to tone down how to, launch these combos, do these air combos and things like that. So that kind of matched what they had in mind for the Versus series going forward. But because of this, the graphics were optimized specifically for the Wii. And that meant porting the game would not have been possible without completely rebuilding the game. So this is why you did not see the game on other systems in that generation. Now, with Tatsunoko involved, localization was crazy. In fact, the game was really only intended for a Japan-only release. It was not meant to go overseas, but eventually it was brought to the West due to positive fan appeals and feedback. However, this meant they had to check each character's rights, checking each character one at a time. Time Warner and some companies, owned rights in America. And then they also had to check it again for the European rights.
Oh, boy.
It's kind of amazing that only Hakushandaima was cut, to be honest. And even then, he has a questionable design to him, so it's probably best that he didn't make the West, honestly. Probably best to leave that in Japan. But other things were cut because of just the localization nightmares. The arcade mode. Each character had animated endings in the Japanese version. And because of, however you could translate it or just other nightmares with localization, artwork by Udon replaced these. And so if you think like, oh, the endings were a little lackluster with the bum 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 kind of music with still images, it was animated scenes in the Japanese version, but localization. In fact, it got to the point when on November 7th, 2012, Capcom USA's Senior Vice President Christian Svensson revealed that Capcom's rights with Tatsunoko had lapsed, meaning Capcom was no longer authorized to sell Tatsunoko vs. Capcom physically or digitally.
Ugh.
Unless the rights were going to be re-argued and, brought up once again for each character in a modern setting, this is a game that will be forever lost and locked to the Wii era.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. Definitely some good memories playing it at the time. Even if you still have it on your Wii and you boot it up, it's a real good time. Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars was reviewed well with a Metacritic score of 85. The variety of characters, its soundtrack, and the simplicity with depth of the fighting system, this is all praised. But the tediousness of the arcade mode and the lack of recognizability for Tatsunoko characters, these were some critiques. In fact, some people also pointed out that the online mode was laggy. But hey, that's just Wii for you.
And the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Mm-hmm. So, Cross Generation of Heroes sold more than 62,000 units as of December 2009 in Japan, and there aren't official numbers out, but it's estimated that Ultimate All-Stars passed about 500,000 sales worldwide, which, not bad, considering what I think is Seth Killian, who worked for Capcom at the time, said it didn't beat any speed records, but it's not bad considering some people can't even say the title properly. And the game didn't really win any awards. I mean, come to think about it, in 2010 when it came to awards in the West, if you're talking about best Wii game, that's Super Mario Galaxy 2. If you're talking about the best fighting game, yeah, that probably went to Super Street Fighter 4. So I feel like TVC was kind of just like stuck in the middle there. But if you're trying to think about its legacy, I would say that it paved the way for Marvel vs. Capcom 3 to be a reality again. Not only did you have the resurgence of fighting games with Street Fighter 4, but you had the Versus series come back. And there was interest on Wii. What could we do with a multi-platform release like on Xbox 360 and PS3? And Nitsuma, same producer, just moving over. So I feel like TVC may have helped MVC3 happen. But otherwise, yeah, just a really niche game on Wii. And we both seem to have very fond memories of it. I picked this game to talk about because of its soundtrack. And I thought, there's got to be some reference material, right? No. In fact, I picked a composer because, I was interested in, he had a pretty good library of work, and he worked on this game. I want to learn more about him. And no, there's just no information. In fact, to the point where Tatsunoko vs. Capcom did not have an official video game soundtrack release. So you can't even tell who worked on which track. Doesn't help things. But I've pieced together whatever I could find. So let me tell you about Akihiko Narita. Akihiko Narita was, when was he born? I found 2 different birth dates for Akihiko Narita.
Whoa, that's a first.
In fact, it just goes to show how weird and disparate the information is about him. Wikipedia says he was born on April 6th, 1980, but Video Game Music Database, VGMDB.net, notes November 8th, 1977 in Ota, Tokyo, Japan. They also note that he's blood type AB. That might be a first too for all the weird Japanese musicians that get their blood type noted. He's been employed at Capcom since around 2004, 2005. Again, it was not very clear based on different sources when exactly he started at the company, but he's still there today. That's it. I'm sorry. I really tried looking. You try all the usual tips and tricks and the things that have worked well for us in the past, and oh, no. Nothing about Akihiko Narita, but he's worked on games in the Monster Hunter series, the Devil May Cry series, Resident Evil series. So let me list some of these specifically. I worked on Monster Hunter Freedom and Freedom 2, Monster Hunter 2 or DOS, Lost Planet Extreme Condition, which is the game that the big PTX40A big being comes from. He was one of the many musicians that worked on Devil May Cry 4, Resident Evil 5 and 6, Monster Hunter Generations, or Monster Hunter X in Japan, Umbrella Corps. I think he's like the main composer for Umbrella Corps. But his big recent project was Monster Hunter World and its Iceborne expansion. And he even arranged Tundra Man off the Mega Man 11 soundtrack. So other credited composers on the soundtrack and the credits for Tatsunoko vs. Capcom include Yasumasa Kitagawa, Kota Suzuki, Akihiko Narita, and Ryo Uratani. The English vocals for a couple songs in the Ultimate All-Stars release were performed by Anna Golston. And spoilers for a fighting game plot, Yami from Okami is the final boss. That's the being that's messing up the distortion of the world. So from Okami, we've talked about that game before on this show, and its final boss music, Rising Sun, or The Sun Rises. We've talked about how that's such a great song. It is literally used verbatim in the last stage of the final boss in this game in the arcade mode. So, yeah, a neat little inclusion of a song that we've already talked about before. But let's get to talking about the songs from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, the ones that stand out to us and think that they're really important to talk about here. Let's get to the Critical 5, starting with Across the Border.
You can push yourself to the limit, be strong and jump with me. You can fly over a rainbow with me, close your eyes and just believe.
Nothing's gonna stop you and me from getting into where we wanna while the beat is kicking. You know that you're my kindred spirit. Fly with me, Jay-Z, and put you to the limit.
You used to hide behind another face. At first I didn't understand, but then I saw.
I think it's important to note with a couple of these that there are differences between the Japanese version in Cross Generation of Heroes and the localized English version. Not just with lyrics, but sometimes like the music changes as well. And I think this is the case certainly with Across the Border. Across the Border is the opening movie theme. It's composed by a different composer, though he was uncredited apparently. This is Hidenori Maezawa. As I mentioned, vocals by Anna Golston, and this Ultimate All-Stars version has a bit of rap by James C. Wilson. I don't think it fits super well with the game, to be honest. It's completely different than most everything else. But the Cross Generation of Heroes version, it's a little more rocky and a little more distorted, like a little tin can vocal sounding. I think this is just, there's something so smooth and cool and catchy, especially with the rap inclusion. It stands out. It's a good earworm, and it's the opening movie theme. I think it's important to cover in a Critical 5.
I just have one thing to tell you, though. I got you when the going gets rough, yo. Nobody's as tough as this love. Song's great. I love this song. It's so catchy. It is one of my favorite intro songs to a fighting game that there is, though I agree, it sure does not fit this game about Capcom characters fighting anime characters from the 80s. But what can you do?
If anything, it stands out more because of it. But then you get through the main menu and you got some fighting to do. And so you'll hear the next song, number 2 on the Critical 5. This is Character Select. The clip we're playing here is actually from Cross Generation of Heroes, so the Japanese game. On a personal note, it's the one I identify with a lot more. Don't get me wrong, the Ultimate All-Stars version is very similar, but if anything, that international release version goes a little harder on some of the instrument balance. It kind of, I think it throws off the balance a little bit too much. This kind of keeps it a little more simplified, but has the nice driving beat going behind it. It's like this club trance beat, but such a catchy melody. It's not, I want to take you for a ride, repeatable and catchy, but it gets going in your head as you're scrolling through those options. You're like, what the heck is a polymer? Like, I don't know. Who should I pick for my team? This is like probably the song that if you played this game, like, oh yeah, I remember this one the most. And, other songs may jump out more, certainly on the list, but had to have this here in a Critical 5 for TBC.
See, I'm in the opposite corner. I'm most familiar with the Ultimate All-Stars version. I was not aware that they were different between the two versions. I do think I agree that the little bit more low-key version is probably the better one. Because if I remember correctly, the Ultimate All-Stars version is just like, you want some synths?
Mm-hmm.
We have synths for you.
Like, it just cranks things up too much and like it loses the key soul of it, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. But this is a really, really good song. I agree.
It was tough to pick a character theme out of all the different character themes that exist in Tatsunoko versus Capcom. But when I came across this one, I'm like, nope, this is the one. Number 3, this is Batsu's theme. So this is a take on the Taiyo High School rooftop theme from Rival Schools. It's such a good blend of this electric guitar that's wailing. You get the synths going, and you just really can jam to this one. And I feel like I didn't know what Rival Schools was when I was playing Tatsunoko versus Capcom. So like, oh, here's this character, and when you're playing as him, he's got these like fire fist attacks and all that. But oh, that voice sounds really familiar. Well, in the game, he's voiced by Nobuyuki Hiyama, who is the commonly used voice actor for The Legend of Zelda's Link, especially in the Super Smash Bros. Series, as well as Adult Link in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So you're playing this game like, oh, that's Link's voice. He's doing the same sort of grunts and sort of sounds. Yeah, I just really resonate hard with Batsu's theme, and I think like, yep, that's the one I got to put here if I had to pick.
Yeah, I think this theme rocks. I'm not as familiar with the character themes as I am with the stage themes in this particular game. Whereas in like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, it's the direct opposite. I'm more familiar with the character themes than the like themes of the stages.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are you familiar with Rival Schools now? Because I wasn't when I played the game either. I had no idea who Batsu was. I have since seen like footage of Rival Schools games, and I desperately wish Capcom would bring it back. It seems so unique and kind of funny, all things considered. And I think it would do great in today's sort of world where fighting games have made a comeback. So, hey Capcom, if you are listening to this, I'm like one of the million voices telling you to make it into the rival schools, please. Thank you.
I should look more into that. Absolutely. Let's get to a couple stage themes. And I feel like some of the stages that stand out most, not only to my ear, but also to fans at large, if YouTube comments are to be believed. Number 4 on the Critical 5, this is Orbital Ring Systems Cargo Bay. Oh, we lean into that dance vibe, huh? Oh, it's really going hard with trance there. This comes from Tekkaman Blade's stage with Orbital Ring Systems Cargo Bay. A lot of comments on YouTube pointing. Did you remember that old early 2000s dance hit with "Do you think you're better off alone?"
Think so.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are like, oh, this might as well just be the backing for that song. And I'm like, oh, I can hear that. I get that for sure. And I guess there's like another sort of EDM synth song that like some people think like, oh, it's just, this is, you're better off alone with this. Like, so maybe not the most original thing or it's inspired by other things, but oh, it's so good on a fighting game stage. Are you kidding? It really gets you pumped up for a battle.
Yeah, this song is really, really good. I don't think it's in my like top 5 stage themes, but like I remember it quite clearly and I remember listening to it a lot back when I was in high school. And yeah, it's leaning into that dance vibe. This is a club hit.
Mm-hmm.
Put into a fighting game, which I mean is not new. Capcom's been doing that for years. But yeah, this is a fantastic song.
It's like a sound wall for all the best reasons. So good. The best stage theme, though, is number 5 on the Critical 5, Yatterman's Workshop. Literally the best. And if you disagree, you can fight us.
Yeah, I'll fight you. I'll fight you right now, listener.
This is from Yatterman's stage. Go figure. I think what makes this song so great, and again, oh, it's such a shame to only pick 30 seconds. It kills me. Please listen to the whole thing. I think the coolest thing about it is like it doesn't stay the same for too long. Like, it's always moving into new things with, like, trying out different synth sounds, trying out new melodies. But because it's in that workshop, you always have this intense, driving, mechanical beat behind it. And the stage is, like, these bright colors, golds and purples, and it's fantastic. Fits Yatterman so well. The best stage theme. I could listen to this on loop for a long time.
Oh yeah, with a bullet, 100%. This is just, this is my favorite song in the entire game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just not even best stage theme. This is the best song in the game. It just has this constant energy to it that just feels fun, which I don't know a lot about Yatterman. I know he is an anime character that Tatsunoko made, and he fights with like one of those mallets that have a ball on them with a string.
I think there's some yo-yo attacks.
Yeah, he's weird. He fights with toys, basically, and I think this fits it perfectly. And also, I know that Yatterman, the villain, the Duranjo gang, is like the central inspiration for Team Rocket, in the Pokemon anime.
1000%, yes.
Like without those characters, Team Rocket probably would not exist in the fashion that they do. So that's really cool. And so I've always wanted to go watch one of the Yatterman animes. I know there's a newer one because old anime is really rough to go back to. Believe me, I live with a guy who watches it all the time. It's all bizarre and unsettling. But there is like a newer, more modern Yatterman series that came out in like 2007 or something like that. Somewhere around there. And so I've always wanted to watch that, but I've never really done so. What I've gathered just from this game alone is that it's a fun superhero character. And this song nails that feeling, I think. It's fantastic.
I think if there were a Tatsunoko series that I'd want to see, it would be Yatterman. You're right. Yep. So, Joe, tracks on the cutting room floor. You got a couple. Hit me with them.
Well, my first one is Gesellschaft, Clear Skies. This song plays on Mega Man Volnut's stage, which also has a Storm variation with its own song. It is based on the Gesellschaft, which I believe is Tron Bond's ship, like the Bond family's ship.
I think so, yeah.
I mostly remember this song because it was the background music for Frank West's reveal trailer for Ultimate All-Stars. And that, for some reason, burned this song into my brain completely. And apparently, if YouTube comments are to be believed, I'm not the only one, because all of the comments on this video are Frank West quotes from the game. The, whoa, just take it easy, pal. And that kind of thing. But also, looking back on it, hey, why was this song used for that trailer? Frank had his own stage. The Willamette Parkview Mall was a stage in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Ultimate All-Stars. Why didn't they use that? I mean, I guess that song's not as good, I'll admit. But, I don't know, this song's just really catchy, and I enjoy it. I especially like that voice that's like, here we go.
It's a good funk to it. I think some people may like the Storm variation a little more, but
I also like the Storm variation. Not as much as Clear Sky, but yeah, I think that's also a very good song. And the other one is Burning Wasteland. This is the music for Kashan's second stage, which is just his first stage, but what if it was on fire now? And honestly, I really just like this song because it goes hard. Like, really, really hard in a way that other songs on the soundtrack don't really go that hard. And I really dig this song.
it's like late 2000s, like, you want to be tough, you want to be a badass, all right, come get some kind of thing. Yeah, got that vibe to it.
I don't know anything about Kashan. I tried to watch Kashan's Sins, which is the modern take on it, and it was one of the most boring shows I've ever watched. I made it 3 episodes in and gave up. So...
He's got a dog.
He's got a dog named Friender. It's a robot dog. Its name is Friender. It should be cool. But it was not a good show. It was not a good show.
For something completely opposite and different, first of my 2 songs on the cutting room floor is Roll's theme.
伝えないこの想い止まらない戻れない抱きしめて捕まえても離さないで
This is probably the most drastic difference between the Japanese version and the English version.
AKA a good song versus a bad song.
So this is the good song, as you may have guessed. It's titled Kaze yo Tsutaete, and the English song is called Where the Wind Blows. Yeah, the Japanese version beats the pants off the English version in every single way. Not only is it just a better, more pleasant key in general for the music, but also the singing voice when you're talking about the character of Roll. See, Anna Golson's got a great voice, especially for Across the Border in the opening theme, but her more mature sounding voice does not fit the character of young Roll from Mega Man, who has a broom and rainbows and a little red dress. No. But the best part about this is that this original song, Kaze yo Tsutaete, is composed by Yoshinori Ono.
That doesn't make sense.
Yoshinori Ono, for those that do not know, has been the front-facing Capcom person for the Street Fighter games as of late. The very exuberant man who's a big fan of Blanca. Now like their head honcho fighting game producer. Composed this song?
That's weird. I don't know what to do with that information.
I don't understand either, but that's kind of amazing. My other song on the cutting room floor is Las Vagas. It's like Las Vegas, but if they switch the vowels.
Oh my god.
This takes place in this big lights city of Las Vegas, and it's apparently Palomar's second stage. Funny, I always thought it was related to Beautiful Joe, but I must be mistaken, because the music sure sounds like it's a Beautiful Joe kind of thing with all this funky jazz and these sick piano riffs. It's a really catchy, great stage song. I had to put it at least here in the cutting room floor.
Yeah, it's a really, really good piece. I feel bad that there are a couple stage themes that like we had to leave off, because there are a lot of really good stage themes in this game. Like, wow, you are not wrong. This is an underappreciated soundtrack just as much as it is an underappreciated game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really good. And I think that this list here is pretty good. And if you like what you hear, definitely go check out the whole soundtrack in whatever way you can.
By all means, yeah. It's a great soundtrack. And I just wish there were more information about it. I was really disappointed with the research that's available online, and yeah, I definitely wanted to at least put it out there for people to listen to, because you may have forgotten about Tatsunoko versus Capcom, or you don't know the first thing about it, or what's a Tatsunoko. But what I'll never forget about this game is that it is this obscure game, that it is locked to time on the Nintendo Wii as a fighting game with its own arcade stick that you could buy for the game. On Wii. Like, what? But like, it helped me learn about classic Japanese anime characters. I think your comparison to Hanna-Barbera in the United States is incredibly apt. And yeah, wow. The soundtrack, just some classic fighting game music tracks that I feel, get overlooked far too often.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's also about where I stand. I do wish this game could come out on anything else. Or, honestly, I'd take a sequel at this point. Neither of those things seem like they're ever going to happen. But I feel like this game deserved more attention than it ultimately got. I do not think it helped that it came out the same year as Street Fighter 4. Did not realize that was the case. Suddenly, it makes a lot more sense that this game did not get a huge amount of attention. Because that game is largely agreed to be the one that saved fighting games, and so absolutely overshadowed the hell out of Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. I'm like you. I like to, when there's a crossover game like this, I like to go and do research into the other side that I don't know as much about. This was probably my first experience with that. So I did go learn about Gatchaman a little bit. I've never watched a Gatchaman series. I probably never will. I watched Karas. Again, don't remember a damn thing about it, but I watched it. I watched a little bit of Cash and Sins. Didn't like it, but that's fine. It's really cool that you can put this in the context of Japanese kids had such a different childhood from like American kids in that era in like the 60s, 70s, 80s because of the cartoons they were watching. And these are the people that were making those cartoons, and this must have been the coolest possible crossover back in those days for them. For us, it was just a bunch of characters we didn't know because these characters, when they were brought over to America, it was back in the era when we completely changed things. Like, I think, I don't even remember what Gatchaman came over here as, but it did come over here as something, and we like renamed it completely, and we changed the plot and everything, and that's just how anime went back then. These shows all came out before anime became popular in the West. And so just to see that disparity, it's really neat. And I think overall, that's what I'm always going to remember about Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. A window into a world that I never would have experienced otherwise.
Well put. The something tells me I can't imagine Fred Flintstone, George Jetson, Yogi Bear.
Imagine if tomorrow we were like told, all right, Mortal Kombat versus Hanna-Barbera. That's essentially what this game was for Japan, I imagine.
Hey, boo-boo, I'm gonna rip his head off. Oh, man. And on that note, so wraps up Capcom Week. Not any reason why it was Capcom Week, but, games that we wanted to talk about. And hey, it's a pretty good thread between them. That'll do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at Thidobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. But it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasterpieces, is also hosted. And you can find Original Soundchat on podcast services around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, the podcast feed is even on Spotify. But not only that, we also have a Spotify playlist where if we talk about a video game track on the show and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to that big playlist. Joe, is anything being added this week?
Well, Capcom is usually pretty good about their soundtracks, so Mega Man 2 is in fact on Spotify and will be added to the playlist. Unfortunately, like you said, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom never got an official soundtrack release, so it is not on Spotify. Unfortunate.
Must be all those themes with licensed characters.
Probably.
What a bummer.
It's probably the same reason why none of the Marvel vs. Capcom soundtracks are on Spotify either.
That's a really good point, actually. Wow. And then you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST. Catch up with us, see what we're teasing next. Tell us how we're doing, leave us some feedback, and also games that you'd like us to cover in the future on the show. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
Next week I will be talking about Lucas Pope.
I will be talking about Brian Tyler. Yar, it be another themed week, I tell ye.
Yo ho ho, everybody.
Enjoy some great music going forward here. Well, to play us out, yeah, it's tough to find some music for Tatsunoko vs. Capcom and people who are making covers of it. I don't think, the cover space was as big in the late aughts and early 10s for these kind of games, but someone named Michael Music, I wonder what his first name is, did a remix of the Character Select theme. And it's such a catchy jam, that Character Select theme. So here we go. Let's play it for you here. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.